Psychotechnologies
Live.
Live. I forgot what episode we're doing. Oh yeah, ADD. So we're doing ADD this week.
Right.
So just like start off, I got ADD. I got lots of friends ADD. I hang out in like communities of people that have ADD. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So if we're gonna like come across negative or whatever, whatever, take it for whatever it is.
Right.
Some of the best stories in my life, like the best parties, best things have happened, are people like ADD just getting distracted and like doing something that doesn't make sense in the normal world. And Elliot's got this friend that
right. So I knew this person once. I actually went on a date. It was a date. This is many years ago, but I went on a date and she did not stop talking for 3 hours straight. It was remarkable. It was like if I was in the mood to be offended by a person who opened her mouth and didn't stop, I would have been highly offended, but I'm not such an offendable type. And so I was just amazed at someone's ability to not only continue talking, but like weave topics from all over the place and just she was going through a thing and she was working out what she was.
So paint for me the scene. So where'd you meet her? Tinder?
Yeah, I don't even remember. One of those.
You
one of the dating sites, or and then we went on the date and she just
go for like dinner, coffee.
Sort of dinner coffee thing. Yeah.
Okay,
and
dinner coffee.
And I was like, I've got the like very accepting side of me that's very patient and like whatever goes, let's go with it. And then I've got the like, more assertive masculine, like, no, let's go down this path. And I was just like, oh, let's just be accepting and see where we go. And it was remarkable. And she did this talking for hours. The date went all right, but I was like, not that interested. Thanks, goodbye. It was remarkable though. And I mean, I just saw the ADHD in there. If they're like, I'll weave paths, I'll get distracted so easily and like just switch topics. And me and my
just meandering through reality and like
who knows
different stuff, and you're just like watching this like fascinated for like an hour.
Yeah. Well, I was like, why would I bother being offended? It's not going to give me. But so like, I mean, my job in that moment, it felt like, was to normalize and make peace with the fact that this is where this person was. But there's this big question for all of mental health. This is not just an ADHD thing, but is my mental illness impacting the functioning of my life? So if we went on that date and I was like, I hate this, I don't like your weird mental health thing, like, you're a shitty person because you're not even listening to me, that may have been starting to impact her life. She may have it was probably less of a fun date to be on if I had said that sort of thing. And that would represent one aspect of her life that is being impacted by mental health. And then what part of the diagnostic criteria is often to look, is multiple parts. So my work, my relationships, my study, if I'm studying, my relationships with my family, if I have hobbies as well, are they impacted? Like, as soon as enough areas of my life are impacted by my mental health, like, oh yeah, it's starting to matter, and it's starting to, diagnosis would be good and treatment would be good. If it's just like very talkative, very creative, very like weaving paths, then like it's not a problem. Right. And that's kind of like, I think of that as the dividing between, is my ADHD, is my mental health a problem? Like, if I'm easily distractible, but I'm in a profession where creativity is key, and I really I get paid for having the most creative ideas, maybe I'm just winning at life. If I can't hold my job down, can't bill my clients because I'm too distracted, then it's starting to affect my life.
Right.
That's
right. So I think
dividing fence.
Yeah. So I think this brings us into like this, like ADD as a mental illness, or is more of a spectrum than it is like a yes or no question.
Right.
And so for this lady, like, if she's going to go on a date and then just talk straight for an hour, like going all over the place, it's probably going to be difficult for her to
connect humans. Yeah.
Yeah. To find
that's
someone.
Like, most of the time I go on the date to try and find connection with someone. It's going to be difficult if I can't stay on topic, if I'm too distractible.
Right. So this will probably be much more on that side of the spectrum. But on the other hand, if they're on a date with someone else who's got like ADD or likes listening, likes to be entertained like this.
Right. And some people are more like introverts. They're happy to be quiet while you talk. That's like perfect match, right?
Right. then that just gets coded as like extrovert, right? Like,
Right.
oh, this lady's taught, and maybe she like, it can get interpreted as she knows many topics, she's good at making connections between ideas. She, you know, in a way this is focused, right? Where like you're just talking straight for an hour, like just wherever. A lot of times, like you go out with people and they're on their phone or they're looking around the room, you know, they're distracted in this way. And she's like focused on the conversation, just not on the other person, which I think probably interferes a bit with her.
Right. I mean, everyone gets distracted. This is the thing about that spectrum, right? Everyone gets a little bit distracted. I know I have another story. Someone else. This was a extended connection, so a couple connections away from me, but he's on a chain around their neck, and they would have their phone and they would have their laptop. And one day they were working in the library and they left their keys and their phone on the table this was university study days, but left it on the table, like walked off and like just forgot. And came back an hour or two later, the phone there, the keys were not there, sort of. Like, it's a big problem. You know, this is to this person, slightly more extreme case, lost their passport. I think it was 2 or 3 times, but enough times that the passport office said, we're not issuing you another travel for 4 years. You can have another passport in two or 4 years time, and you can travel then, but you can't, we're not going to let you travel. We're not going to give you another passport now. Like, this is, we're talking about a type of inattentiveness, which is one of the types of ADHD, and inattentiveness that started causing real impact in life. Mm-hmm. This is like, and you know, we're talking having to get the keys replaced, having to buy a new phone, starting to set up these habits like the thing around the neck so you don't lose the keys. Right? Yeah. So this is like on like this end of this like mental illness, like intense. Bad enough on the bad enough end of the spectrum that this person's life is starting to get dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm. And then like, let's talk about like on the other side of that spectrum, like what does it look like when you have ADD, but it's not really interfering, like where it's not mental illness or it's not really interfering with your life.
Right. So you have creative ideas, or you're like, I want to get off at a different bus stop and walk home. Like, I'm going to enjoy looking around at a little bit of different scenery. I want to walk down different streets. Like, that's fine. You know, they're like, I feel like ice cream. Let's go out and get ice cream. Like the stray thought that like is inspiring and like takes me out of my little bit of funk because I've been at home for too long. Like, oh, okay, that could be a really healthy, natural habit. Right.
So there's this like freshness. I think there's this like freshness to ADD.
Right. They're just like, I know, let's go over here. They seem to like never get tired, right? They're just
right. Everything is new, everything is exciting, everything is like fresh.
Right. And they're like highly resourced to like get this impulse. Right.
And then they're also like really good, I think, at making connections in ways that are like stimulate creativity. So like when you're looking at something and you're like, oh, I see all these connections, it makes it very hard to like stay like focused on a singular path. So like in a way that's like very life affirming, right? When you're somewhere and there's just all these things and everything is connected and you know you're just sort of basking in that.
Right.
I think there does, right? Like that's like people get that on like psychedelics or religious experiences. Like that's kind of the level you have to be to even, you know, get a little bit of the power of the ADD.
Right. So this is you raise an interesting point. I have this concept that I call mental illness as a superpower, which is the like ADHD is probably not relevant so much these days to the world of sitting in front of computer screens for hours a day in order to do a job. But if you go back a couple of 100 years to when we were more farmers and your job was the sheep, or you know, notice that there are weeds starting to grow, or notice that the plants need more water, like your ability to like get distracted and notice that stuff is super important, is super powerful for your success in life, because you're keeping track of all of these other details about the world. Whereas everyone else is like, I forgot to water the plants. You're like, how could you forget? I just went and did it. Like it becomes a superpower in the right context. And so it's worth thinking about, like, okay, that's ADHD, easy to explain. Depression is a superpower in a different context. Like if you're depressed, if you're in a environment where everyone is mean and cruel and harsh, and you're like, if I like stand out, they're going to attack me. Maybe my depression is a superpower right now. Maybe it's keeping me safe by keeping me like down, like quiet, and keeping to myself. It's stopping me from getting literally eaten by the lions out there.
Right.
Like a little bit of depression is a healthy thing in that context. So this is important. So ADHD on a spectrum, where are you on the spectrum? And then like, in what ways can I harness it as a superpower in my life, not just as a like hindrance?
Right. I think that's I actually I like that perspective, because it starts to break it up versus like generally we're here, like you hear kind of like two stories where one is ADD is bad and it like stops you, and then you hear this other one of like, oh, it's our Western structural organizations,
Right,
that blah blah blah, and like whatever, like there's validity to both of those sides, but to more to like break it up and to say what is it useful for, or how does it affect you, or like how does it work how does it exist within the flow of life?
right. Well, I mean, even if you take like autism, right? And autism is generally controversial, that we have the autistic savants, and they seem to be very good at certain things, and then we have the like just less high-powered autism, just some general inability to understand other people's emotions, just the need like autism, keep to yourself, get stuff done, live a simple life. Like that's like, be reliable. Half of the population cannot show up when they say they're going to show up.
Right. People are super flaky.
Any autistic friends, or any compared to autistic friends and normal friends, right? You say normal friend, hey, do you want to meet at 5 p.m.? And do you want to meet up? And they're like, yeah, sure. And you're like, how about 5 p.m.? And they go like, okay, let's meet at 5. And then they show up at 5:10, 5:30, like 10 to 5. The autistic person is showing up at exactly 5 on the dot. They just know how to do that. It's like a superpower to the rest of us. They're just like, oh, 5 p.m. Like remarkable.
That skill is learnable by anyone that like focuses
right
on
it. But there's like
people do focus on it.
There's this beautiful natural way in which you can just do it. They'll just be there, right?
Yeah, and there is something like interesting about that. There is something like interesting about that we're like that. I think I gotta go. Someone's calling my name. But there's something like on that like rigidity and focus where like there's a reliability, or like other people in life, I expect them to like change their views of the world like within 6 months in ways that they don't acknowledge, or to be like stuck in that way. Like the more artistic people, at least like the rationalist community, that's what I'm thinking. Like I expect their ideas, I expect them to evolve over time.
Like the mental models, they're very clear, and then you're like, well, actually it's like this. They're like, oh, thanks, I'll take that, and they just completely shift.
Yeah, and I expect there to be that, like that systematic rigidity, which isn't always good. Like it is problematic often.
Right. But maybe they're missing the dynamic action that other pathologies.
Yeah, and there are ways in which it's harder to update, and they tend to live much more in the models than the reality as is. But like the maps versus the territory. But the maps, the maps are actually useful, and everybody's using the same map. Then you can kind of like you get to like connect with other people in this way,
right?
That I connect with autistic people. Like when I first went to the community, they're like, oh, there's autistic people. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But like, I see like one or two, but then I realized like I am that autistic type of person, and that's why I wasn't seeing them, because I just got there and I'm like, oh, there's like this is where all the normal people are, right?
Okay. And big ideas. Mental illness is a spectrum rather than a black or white. Thinking of your mental illness as a superpower in the right context. So moving your life so that you're living in the better context, not the worse context. Two big ideas.